Here's a quote to get us started by Christian Luce Lang. Technology is a useful servant, but a dangerous master. And I think this is a really important topic to discuss about OCD, anxiety, and technology. These things really do interlink increasingly in today's world, where we spend, so much of our time focused on our phones, laptops, whatever it might be. Technology is creeping into so many different areas of our lives. And, it has all sorts of consequences that perhaps we don't necessarily think about. And when it comes to OCD, some of these consequences, particularly with social media, is that we might spend a lot of time actually engaging in compulsive behaviors without even actually realizing that we're doing it. And of course, when we are doing things like repeatedly checking our phone to make sure that we haven't had any new messages that we haven't checked yet, or we're looking at a post that we've recently posted in order to see how many likes we've got, how many comments we've got, whether anybody is upset about anything that we've perhaps said. All we're really doing is we're reinforcing this kind of OCD behavioral habit. We're posting something, or we're getting the phone out and we're checking. And, rather than just kind of being comfortable with not knowing if we have a message or what people think about something, we're wanting, again, to have that certainty in the same way that we want to have certainty when it comes to our particular obsessions and OCD. Well, we're kind of acting out a very similar thing a lot of the time with social media. The same thing can happen with scrolling. You end up doom scrolling, where you're just sat there, you're looking through TikTok perhaps or Instagram, and you're just flicking through, you're scrolling through, you're checking out new things, but you keep going, even though maybe you're becoming numb. There's a part of you that just wants to keep going with it. And again, this is the kind of compulsive part of social media. And, of course, I'm not saying here that if you have OCD that you shouldn't be using your phone, you shouldn't be using social media. I think it's a really big part of today's world. In many ways, it can be a very positive thing if we are using it in the right way. But I think it's really important that we're aware that, if we don't use it in the right way, it can actually be making OCD harder to manage in the long term, because, as I just pointed out, it seems to exacerbate the kind of unconscious compulsive habits that we might really be struggling with at the heart of OCD. In their blog about social media and OCD, NoCD claim that because this disorder can latch onto anything, it makes sense that OCD symptoms could be exacerbated by social media use. In other words, social media's constant stream of information, news, videos, images, anything and everything could potentially fuel obsessions or become an obsession itself. And, in my experience, this is absolutely spot on. A research paper entitled Obsessive Compulsive Disorder, Types and Social Media. Are social media important and impactful for OCD people? States that our work highlighted that high OCD symptoms people appear to convey greater importance to social media and can be affected more by them in terms of mood, thus making OCD people potentially even more vulnerable to the negative side effects of social media. Again, this is an important reminder that we need to be careful when we're using our phones, that we don't get so carried away by it. One of the worst things that I think we can do when it comes to social media is, first thing in the morning, actually getting your phone and starting to use it, going onto TikTok or whatever, first thing in the morning. If you can have some kind of basic rules around social media use, I think that can be really, really helpful. Even if you're using it for work, for example, just having some basic rules like limits on the amount of time you're going to use it for. There's obviously applications out there that can help you to restrict your phone to a certain amount of usage of each particular app. You may decide to only use it at a given window each day. But I really feel that it's important to kind of put some of these things in place because, if we're not doing that, it can be very, very hard. We can because it is so compulsive, it can really catch us out. And before we know what's going on, we're spending hours on these things each day. And as I've just talked about, this can actually then exacerbate the symptoms of OCD in the long run. Another interesting area when it comes to OCD and technology is something called cyberchondria. And this is, a relatively recent phenomenon, well, within the last 10 years perhaps, where people are increasingly going to Google, perhaps more now. Maybe they're looking at artificial intelligence, maybe they're going to Chat GPT. And people are trying to find out if they have a particular problem, a particular sickness. Of course, this relates to health OCD. If you struggle with health OCD, Google at times can be a huge problem in itself because, of course, we may be struggling with something. We don't quite know what it is. We want to have some more certainty about that. Well, what do we do in OCD when we want certainty? Well, of course, we start performing compulsions. And when it comes to health anxiety, well, that's trying to get more certainty about whatever it is that you fear you may be struggling with. And the internet is an endless resource for that. It doesn't matter how much time you spend on it looking up your particular issue or your particular feared problem that you're struggling with, this idea that you might have something. You can go down an endless rabbit hole. And, it's not going to give you exactly what you're looking for, because, of course, what you're looking for is to not feel anxious anymore. And, unfortunately, the more that we tend to look for that, the more that we try to get the certainty from going back into Google and asking that question in a slightly different way, trying to find a slightly different resource that may explain exactly what it is that we're looking for and just the way we want to understand it. It's not going to help us. In fact, actually, all we're doing is getting ourselves more stuck into that OCD loop. And this is another really important area, I think, when it comes to OCD, is recognizing that that element of technology, of being able to look things up and to try to have more certainty, can actually just keep us more stuck. Another research paper entitled Relationships Between Cyberchondria and Obsessive Compulsive Symptom Dimensions states that these results suggest that, similar to proposed models of cyberchondria and health anxiety, cyberchondria could potentially play a role in the development maintenance of two dimensions of obsessive compulsive symptoms, or vice versa. Having struggled myself with health anxiety and issues related to cyberchondria, I can really see this being true, actually. And when we find ourselves going round in circles looking for information in this way, whether we're ruminating in our head and we're doing puro and we're going around in circles with that, or whether we're actually more physically going to a computer, we're looking for certainty and we're trying to figure things out, it's the same mechanism that's going on underneath this. It's all about us wanting to have that certainty. And, unfortunately, at times, technology can really feed into that. Another issue that people with OCD might face with technology and social media is information overload. Unfortunately, when you have OCD, as you most probably know, it takes up an enormous amount of energy performing compulsions, going round in circles with the obsessions. It can sometimes be take up all your energy to just show up in the world, do all the things that you have to do, and kind of put on that face that you're okay, despite the fact that you may be really struggling on the inside. And that really does take up a lot of our resources. If on top of that, then we are spending, the spare time that we might have throughout the day, then getting our phone out and engaging in social media or other forms of tech in different ways, consuming news or looking at various different content. Unfortunately, that can use up a lot of our emotional energy. And this is emotional energy that we need for the OCD. We don't want to be giving up and giving it away to all of these unhelpful things that are not really giving anything to us in return. All they're really doing is they're kind of taking from us. And, dopamine is an important thing to talk about here as well. When we're consuming social media, whenever you see something that's interesting that you like in some way, you may be getting some kind of dopamine hit from that. And in a moment, that actually feels good. That maybe kind of numbs the fear that you're struggling with, numbs the anxiety. And of course, on some level, that feels good. You're getting that dopamine hit. You're not focused on the OCD anymore. But unfortunately, dopamine is involved with motivation. When we get a bit of dopamine, then we want more of it. And so, all we're really doing is we're kind of getting a bit addicted to the social media. And the more that we keep doing that, the more that we engage with it, well, the more we're going to want to keep doing it. And of course, this is the kind of compulsive cycle again that I was talking about at the start. And so recognizing that social media is really kind of set up in that way to get you in the trap and to kind of keep you there, and that is actually exercising those same kind of networks in the brain that are related to OCD. An article from The Guardian newspaper entitled "Constant Craving: How Digital Media Turned Us All into Dopamine Addicts" claims that although dopamine was only identified by scientists in 1957, seeking pleasure is hardwired into our brains. With addiction, about 50% is down to genetic disposition, with the other 50% coming from environmental factors such as access, says Lemke. Our brains haven't changed much over the centuries, but access to addictive things certainly has. Whereas our ancestors put all of their efforts into seeking a mate and tasty food, we can find those and much more besides with the click of an app. So what can we do about all of this? Of course, as I was talking about earlier, having rules around technology use can be helpful. But I think it's also helpful to reflect on the role of dopamine in the use of technology, because it does seem, as was just pointed out in the Guardian article, that it does have an addictive component to it, almost like, in my opinion, and this is just my opinion, but OCD does seem to share a kind of addictive component to it. In some way, we want to keep doing those compulsions because we get a payoff from it. It actually, when we perform a compulsion, at least in the short term, you temporarily feel better. And, I think something similar happens when we're using technology. In the short term, we numb ourselves, or we feel temporarily better from using it. But in the mid to long term, well, we tend to feel a lot worse. And actually, the previous article that I was just talking about, they interview the author of a fantastic book called Dopamine Nation, which is, of course, talking about these very issues. And it's really looking at addiction to technology, but other modern addictions as well, and how dopamine plays a role in that. I really recommend checking it out. The author actually is very positive about some of the things that we can do about dopamine and these kinds of addictions. In the article, it states Lamkin is sanguine that we can beat our digital dependencies by embracing a more monastic mindset. She advocates replacing some pleasure-seeking vices with painful pursuits. Now, here, I'm sure she's talking about safe, positive, painful pursuits, not doing anything reckless. I'll continue with the article. When doing things that are challenging, going for a run, having an ice bath, talking to a stranger, reading a book on philosophy, instead of receiving a dopamine boost beforehand, we experience it afterwards. Doing things that are hard is one of the best ways to pursue a life worth living, because the pleasure we get afterwards is more enduring, she says. We tend to forget that earned highs are that much sweeter. And I think that's a fantastic way to finish this episode Of course, I practice the Wim Hof method. I like to take cold showers and ice baths. I do so in a safe and responsible way, but it's something that's very helpful for me, and it does give you a dopamine boost. But as she was just talking about there, it gives you one afterwards, and it tends to stick around for a lot longer because you've actually had to work quite hard to get it. But learning how to reduce your technology use in whatever way you want to do that, maybe going on a dopamine fast for a short time to see if that helps you with your OCD and your anxiety, that could be a positive thing to do too. But yeah, I really hope that you enjoyed this episode. If you have any questions at all about anything I was speaking about today, do please let me know, and I will see you next time. Just a quick reminder that if you want to get a free session, all you need to do to get that is to head over to my website, www.robertjamescoaching.com, and there you can leave me a message and we can arrange the free session. And now just a quick reminder of my disclaimer. Any information that you view on my website, Instagram page, Facebook group, or anywhere else online, or any information that you listen to on the podcast is for informational purposes only and is not intended to be a substitute for actual medical or mental health advice from a doctor, psychologist, or any other medical or mental health professional.